Alrighty, so test looks good. I like where that's going. Now it's time to make it big scale. Well, bigger. Again, for the assignment, it's roughly 24-inch cubed, somewhere in that area. That doesn't mean that it actually has to be a 24-inch cube, nor does it need, but neither should it just be a flat 24-inch thing. Something up in the air, something a little bit. Maybe it has multiple chutes. Again, don't forget, be safe with this. You are going to be using an open source flame, or at least I am. If you're using something else or tape, well then obviously that doesn't matter. But with that, and even so, cutting stuff, just watch your hands and clear the area. That's one of the things that always drives me crazy when I'm trying to work, is if I just have stuff cluttered, just clear the area. You're going to be working a bit larger, work on the floor. Work on the kitchen floor, dining floor, garage if you have one. I don't have one, but I do have the shop. So, let's start scaling this up. Alright, so I'm going to be using this plastic roll. This is the stuff that I would have given out. This is the stuff that comes in the big box. Now, one thing to keep in mind, this is not just two sides, as in like just fold it in half. This unfolds to about 9 feet wide, this particular one. So, if I need something that long, I don't need to unroll this whole length 9 feet wide, just I need it to unroll the other way, about is my other dimension. So, I'm going to measure this out, cut this, maybe about 2 feet here. If I cut this lengthwise 2 feet, that means that when it unfolds, it'll be about 9 feet, and then I could just fold that whole thing right back in half, and that's pretty much going to be about the right dimension for me to lay out my wacky wavy arm tentacle. Alrighty, let me lay this out, cut it, and go from there. Alright, so I set my stuff up on the floor. Workbench is going to be a little bit too small, even though it's a good sized workbench, not going to work for me. So, I cut a piece of plastic about, it's about 30 inches wide, but again, working around 24, that gives me plenty of wiggle room there. When I fold this in half, remember, it unfolds quite a long way, so it's about 4 foot long. That gives me plenty of space to work with. So, I'm going to plop down, draw out my plan, and we'll start cutting. Alright, so I've laid everything out here. I've drawn it all out. One other thing is I went and grabbed a couple of chunks of, well, in my shop I've got some chunks of metal I can use, but I went and used a couple of pieces of really just something to weigh the plastic down. You want to keep it all flat and straight because you're trying to make sure those two layers stay sandwiched together when you're mating these together. But I've drawn out my form. Don't forget, make sure you've got a space for your vent. Where are you going to attach the air to this? If there's going to be a fan, make it larger. If it's going to be the hair dryer again, go with that. So, I've laid it out. Pretty much what I want to do. It's still going to be the old tentacle. I'm going to start heating it up and sealing it. Okay, so stick with it. Alright, so I've got the hand pretty much cut out here. Now, basically, I've just made, like, you know, a plastic glove. So, hey, if you're in a pinch and need to make some plastic gloves, well, this is how you do it. Although you could probably just do a lot easier by actually tracing your hand and making a nice hand turkey instead of free forming it like I've done. But, you get the idea. A couple of things I just want to point out. Using the heat searing, I'm heating up my blade with my candle here, or my alcohol lamp. I'm getting about maybe 3 to 5 inches of travel before the knife cools off enough to where it's not sealing and cutting the bag anymore. So just keep that in mind, but I'm going to keep on working my way down and we'll keep going and going. Alrighty, so I've got it laid out. Now, let's test this thing. So, grab the old hair dryer again. Doesn't hurt to make sure it's actually plugged in. Jam it in the end. Now I'm just going to hold this on to the end for now. I made this a lot larger than it needs to be, really just because it's a lot easier to make it smaller than it is to add stuff to it. Let's try it. Alright, so now I'm seeing there's a few holes. That one's a pretty big one. Good sized one there. Alright, I see where the holes are. And go through and patch those. And remember, if you're finding that you have trouble sealing those holes or anything else, you can totally use tape. Again, reminder, I'm just using the heat source, the heat bonding technique because I wanted to use it. I like using it. Do what you like. Alright, so that's the basic layout for a simple form. And I say simple, of course that got a little bit swirly and such, but it's essentially a tube form. My wacky wavy tentacle arm hand the guy. Now, I had a few patches that needed to be repaired. Some I could do with the heat binding that I did to assemble it. Some I had to use tape. There's nothing saying you can't just go directly to tape. That's fine. I just wanted to use the heat sealing. I like using that. It's convenient. It does multiple functions, as in it seals, it cuts. Of course, it also makes a little bit of a stink, so don't forget to be making sure you're in a well-ventilated space. But I do want to make sure to address a couple other things. So, one thing would be, again, that was a simple tube form. As you saw in some of the examples, some of the other things you might be looking up, be it inflatable yard art, or inflatable fine art, sculpture, any variation therein. You see a lot of them with multiple sections. I recommend if you're going to attach multiple sections, treat that the way you would if you were actually sewing a pattern together. Look at how something is actually attached. Look at how your sleeves are attached to the main part of your sweater or body or whatever. Look at how that goes on, and as much as I like the heat binding solution, you probably would do better with tape with that one, just because it's a little bit easier just to make the surfaces up. But we can discuss that at another point in time, or specifically one-on-one. One of the other things, color. If you want to have color on this, now, this is just a clear plastic sheet, so it works really well. Color is not a requirement. But don't rely on paint. Paint does not work well on plastic at all, especially spray paint. It will just flake right off. If you must color it, I recommend either markers or dyes, like food coloring even. And it's not really strong enough, but it might work. And that's what I mean, always test your stuff. But a better solution would be either find the material that's already the inherent color you want, if it is clear. Some plastic bags are green, brown, opaque black, anything like that. Use inherent colors. Other option would be, again, a light source is not a requirement. However, a light source could be a colored light source. Project that up from underneath or even just behind it somewhere so you don't actually directly see the light. And then, bam, instantly your piece is colored because the colored light filters through the piece and basically gets stuck on the walls. Obviously, that's not literally what happens, but light gets projected up through an inflated surface and it really catches on the walls of the form, clear plastic. And that's a perfectly simple way to get light. Now, that's overall basically a wash of color. You don't get details, but you can always attach other materials. Some people have been asking if you could attach different colored plastics. Of course. Even things, floppier, flimsy things, light materials like soft fabric. You could even use like crepe paper or tissue paper. Anything like that. Ultimately, it's got to be light enough where it doesn't drag your form down. You don't want to use anything heavy, it's going to weight it down. This is all very flimsy, very light material. So an air source like a hairdryer will totally work. So those are the basics of it. Draw out your forms, figure some stuff out, lay out your area, clear out your area, be safe, take your time doing it, have fun, enjoy. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon. So one last thing before I go. I had a question about how do you actually attach two separate pieces together. And I don't mean sandwiching the two halves together. I mean, say you have a full tube form and you want to attach something else, like the actual arms of, like, say, the legit wacky wavy arm man guy. How would you do that? Well, I said look at how, like, your sleeves are attached to the main body of your sweater, things like that. But to be a little more descriptive, what you want to consider is you're effectively attaching two tubular sections, one to the other. And where those meet is how you're going to actually attach this. So, zoom in on here, and I'll show you a little more focus of what I'm talking about. Now, what I mean by that is, and sorry for the extreme close-up, is you effectively have two separate forms. you have your main body that has dimension to it. Maybe this is the one that actually has the airflow in, so it has more of a bottom. And I'm just drawing like a cylinder here, and maybe it has like a little port that you've attached in there, so there's that, and your air coming in goes that way. Like a wavy. Over here, you have your other form. Now, ideally, you might think, you know what, I'll make a complete sealed form and attach that on. Don't do it that way. What you actually want is to, in effect, leave a port just like the other one has. So you'll actually leave it, and let me just put a dotted line, so that's effectively where the end of the form is, but you'll have a little flange. Now, this is if you're making it two pieces sandwiched together, you're going to have two sides. So we'll have kind of one side, and the other side goes off in the opposite direction. You can use that, plop it on the form, and then, honestly, I would recommend tape for this. Strip of tape, tape it on either side. Now, obviously, you want that to plop on a lot better, a lot closer to, and then you can tape up your additional sides. However, now I'm just using different colored markers just so you can see a little more easily. But that's going to be the best way to do it.